Travis, hi.
Hi.
If someone were as unfortunate as to not know who you are and you had to introduce yourself to them, what would you say? Who
I'm
are you?
a person who does like a lot of things decently well, I think.
A lot of
Well,
things.
But like I don't have the opportunity to do too many of them like as much as I would like. So I like make music as much as I can. I like to do electronic stuff. Yeah, I've just been doing it for a while. And
How long is a while?
I mean, kind of my entire adult life. I was doing stuff at Death by Audio for a while, for like 8 or 9 years, or maybe longer, and a while making records with this band called Grooms. Shortly before the pandemic, I was like, I want to start a new band and not do Grooms anymore, and didn't know what I wanted to do work-wise, and then the pandemic came and just put stops on all of the plans anyway, so it was okay.
So I know you from Activity.
Oh yeah, Activity, that's the other thing.
Yeah. I know
That's
you
the
from
new band.
I know you from Activity. And when I first saw the band, I thought that it was amazing because I hadn't seen a band like you guys. And I hadn't seen a band that when I saw them live in the city that it spoke to me as much as Activity did.
Aww.
And I want to know what made you want to start a band like that, right? Because this is not a diss. It's not as an in-fashion style of
Right.
band, right? So
Yeah.
what's the reason that that's what you gravitated towards?
Probably in like kind of a pretentious way, but also just in a like it's a good goal to shoot for. Just like have a band that doesn't really fit in with anything too much. And I think like looking back at like that band Grooms, I think like it, as much as I wanted it to sound like completely its own thing or something, it didn't. And then so with Activity, it just seemed like a good chance to like start over.
A multitude appears behind you in the mirror of your friends. Do not be scared. Do not be scared. Do not be scared. Do not be scared.
What it is just kind of what came out of that, like getting into the practice space and setting up a sampler and 3 synths and your amps and the drums and 3 mics and just being like, I don't know, here's a little part of a song, let's just jam on this, and then that's what kind of came out of it.
Was it kind of like experimental in the roots? Like you guys got together and just
Yeah.
whatever happens, happens?
Yeah, big time.
So you didn't have any specific influence going into Activity, or did you have like a set of influences?
I mean, there's definitely like a krautrock kind of thing at times of just like repetition and rhythmic kind of like a pulse to things instead of like, like this part, then this part, and all these big changes. And that's part of it for us for sure. But I think the bands that we were like thinking about in terms of what the influences were kind of all over the place themselves. Just knowing like, okay, if we like think like, well, there's this broadcast song, or there's this Amon Duel song or something like that, and like as the loosest reference point, it's just going to end up being its own thing.
Another thing I noticed about you guys is seeing you live. Then I went home and I said, okay, I'm going to go listen to the record, fully expecting the record to not reflect that. How did you do that? How did you capture kind of the live sound in your recording?
Well, a lot of that immediately has to go to Jeff Berner. I don't know if you know him.
Heard of Jeff Berner.
He's great, and he was definitely kind of a fifth member in a lot of ways. Definitely on the first record, it was also easier for the live thing in the recording to sound similar because we had only played like 2 shows before we recorded. So
Wow.
we'd been a band for like 6 months, I think, when we started recording. We had like a 4-piece setup in like, I want to say September of 2018, and we went in with Jeff just to like do some like loose ideas. Like he was like, let's just do a day, like just like for fun. And I think we did that in October of like a month after we had the 4 people that played on the record. And that went really well. And then 4 months later, we recorded the other song. So it was probably 5 or 6 months of that. And so what was in the studio was kind of what it sounded to us like in the practice space, plus being like us telling and working with Jeff to be like, we want it to sound, you'd give him like loose ideas and just like, want it to sound like a rainforest or, something like super vague. And he'd be like, gotcha.
So sort of like surrealistic.
Yeah. And like not too band in a room, like, like not the vibe of that, in terms, and he kind of just got it from the get-go. So the live show for the first record, like kind of grew out of the recording, and instead of vice versa, instead of us trying to nail the live thing in the studio, it was like, okay, well now we have this album. How do we do this live?
I'm in the same situation. I made the record before I ever for Night Night. I made that record before I ever played live. So then it's like, shit, how do I do this in real life?
Yeah.
Which is it's actually really difficult to
absolutely
do it backwards, I guess. And I wonder, when you go back and listen to the record, do you still love it?
I'm sure I've listened to it like once or twice in the last year, if only because we have a new album, so I was kind of like playing it back to back or something like that. And yeah, honestly, I'm really proud of it in a way that is on. It's really good to be as into a record 3 years later with another record ready to go as I am of that record. It feels if that was the last record I ever got to do, I'd be like, cool.
So part of this, speaking with artists and musicians that I really love, is that I've seen this wave of people posting and telling me that right now is like a very difficult time to continue in music, partially because financially we're doing it because we love art. We're not doing it because we're going to make a living.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's just the sheer amount of stuff that's coming out. It's really hard to get noticed. Do you feel yourself experiencing anything like that, or do you feel discouraged? And if you do, like, what keeps you going? Why do you keep doing it?
Definitely feel it, and sometimes it definitely feels like actual despair. Honestly, of just a sense of what. Now, what's the point? Because I know what the point is. The point is like I love doing it, and I've loved doing it since I was 12, and I didn't know how to play guitar, and I did it anyway. But yeah, just like a kind of in the same way as like watching like almost it's not the same thing and the stakes are not the same, but watching like rigged politics, or something like that, where you're just kind of like there's a candidate you love and you just know in your bones they're never going to make it through the primary or something like that.
I knew that.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, the pain.
But so it's like that feeling of just like, well, that doesn't make me not believe in the things that I believe in. It just means that I don't have a lot of hope for the things that I believe in happening. And I guess in a similar way, it's like that with music and seeing like you're up against like algorithms and a lot of people with like generational wealth and who don't have to have day jobs, who on their before they even have an album out can like afford to go on tour and lose money and like but then it's like it's all those feelings, but then it's also like, well, the guitar's there, the sampler's there, the computer's there, like I'm not going to not make it. And just kind of like honestly like psyching yourself into this mindset of for me of just being like, well, for the next 2 hours while I'm recording this or working on this, I'm just going to like believe that it matters to somebody besides me, or could. And that said, it's all, but like it's really fun and cathartic for me to like stay up late with a guitar or whatever it is that I'm working with and really dive in. But part of what makes me like as attuned to the or get into like the detail of like this lyric instead of this lyric or this chord instead of this chord is just kind of like putting myself into like a weird trance where I imagine that like it's like, I don't know, this song could get out there and like could positively affect somebody's life.
So you're still hoping. Your hope is that it'll just touch someone. You're not really.
Yeah.
You're not hoping for worldwide success, or are you still hoping for that? But you're not counting on it.
No, I mean, like it would be awesome, but it would be like it's also the other thing is like you said in terms of the kind of music we make. We're making the wrong kind of music for that. So the bigger hope is just that like somebody like the basis of all of it is like just making something that sounds really cool to somebody else and sounds special to somebody else, and it can be like that thing where there's like the one moment of the song that just kind of the first time you hear it you're just like, oh my god, like I have to, like you feel something deep, like cheesy as it is, like so that's kind of the bigger or the primary thing.
Well, I mean, mission accomplished, because that's why I like your band, right? Because I actually felt something when I saw you guys play. I think that another misconception that happens a lot with people who don't play music is that old adage of if you do what you love, you won't work a day in your life. And I love music, and it's fucking work, and it's hard work. I find that when it's something that you love and that it's something that you really care about, it's actually much harder when something doesn't work out or it takes longer, or it's different, because if you work a day job and something doesn't work out, you walk out of there and you're like, that sucked, that was terrible. Right. But this is like a part of yourself that now no one cares about.
Yeah, 100%.
It's different, and it's hard. Have you ever done anything that didn't succeed, that you thought, okay, this failed and it hurts me that people don't recognize it, or people don't like it, or I don't like it anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I think to a large extent, every everything I've ever done kind of feels like that.
Everything I've ever
it's like it's a spectrum of like I wouldn't know, and maybe this is like the trap of all of it, with money or attention or anything, is I don't even know what would make you feel like that's success. Like you would, like you put something out there and you get X back and you're like, okay, well that was a success. I don't know what that would look like. I've never felt like completely like that did everything I was hoping it would do, which is totally fine. I've been very lucky. But so everything is like kind of a success and kind of a failure, I guess.
Yeah. It's a very human condition thing that you just
Yeah.
said, right? You hear this from famous musicians a lot, that they get to a point that they thought would be the point that made them feel like they did it.
Right.
And then it wasn't what they thought it was.
Yeah.
I know that I've seen articles about bands you've written, you've been in, written on the internet and stuff. And I remember when I was young, there was a point where I thought, I just want to be in a magazine. I want a magazine to write about me, and that says that I've made it. People care, and so there's a lot of levels that you've hit. People like your music. You're written about. Super cool. You're in New York. All this stuff. Because you're not from New York either, right?
Right.
Yeah. So there's these things that I think people aspire to that you've done, but it's still. We don't feel that way. We feel like there's more to do, and maybe none of this was for anything. But
Yeah. It is a success, and from exactly the perspective you just said of just like I remember in college like playing a show a week after a band that I had heard of played a show in the same venue and being like, this is incredible. I'm on the same stage.
you're in the same place.
Yeah, like I'm literally just on the same stage, and but they're not there. They don't know who I am. There's 1/10 as many people in the room. It's the same kind of thing where, whether it's in terms of attention or, which I hate even admitting that that's part of it, but it's that sense of like, well, I didn't quite nail it with that, and that's it's not just with like success in any like kind of material or attention based ways, but just like you listen back and you're like, no. I thought at the time that was what I wanted that song to sound like, or a song to sound like, but like I didn't quite get where I wanted. And to a certain extent, that restlessness is like what it keeps you going, to never feel like you like totally nailed it and now you're just done,
When you talk about attention, with the activity, you're up front, right? Is that what you always wanted to do? Did you always want to be the front person? Because I fell into that. I never really wanted to be in front. But was that something that you always had in you?
No, I actually think I could be wrong, but I'm actually I'm very happily I am in front, but I'm not in the center, and that's super great for me. Like I love the idea, and this is also part of I think what makes the band what it is that with Grooms I like saying, I think except for a couple songs that a friend who used to be in the band was in when she was in the band, she sang, but for the most part it was always me on guitar, it was always me singing, and I was like, I would love to have a band where I can just go back and like hit buttons on a sampler and somebody else sings. And I love just being part of it instead of it being like I don't want to be in the front in that sense. I don't want to be the center of everything at all. And I think that totally makes it a better.
There's a lot of
band.
Texture and activity, and that's because you're not everything. I
Yeah,
guess,
I couldn't
right?
do it all. Yeah, and I wouldn't think of it all either. Like even if it's nowhere near like the kind of thing where like everybody's playing things that they wrote, and that they came up with. And even if it's like I hear a melody in my head, what if you did this? Like then it's like run through the filter of this other person playing it. And Jess is like an incredibly like unique guitar player who like will often I'll just be like, I don't know where that came from, And so even if it's a suggestion to like do something, it's for in any of our directions, it's always going to be it's different than like I would never want to be in a band where it's like I wrote everybody's parts, let me teach them, and I write 25% of what's going on, the stuff I'm doing, that's it.
It's great. It turns out great. I'm trying to remember the story because I saw it on Instagram where you were talking about there was a particular sound you were trying to find for a particular song, and you couldn't get it with what you had. And so you developed a guitar pedal. Or
right.
a pedal, not a guitar pedal, but
Right.
you could use it for anything.
Yeah.
And your decades of experience at Death by Audio made this a possibility. Don't try it at home. You have to know
Right.
what you're doing. No, I'm just kidding. Anyone could try. But I've got one. Because when I saw on Instagram that you had this, I was trying to be the first person who's like, I want one. I've never heard anything like that. Please let me have one. Tell everybody about this. But first of all, it's so cute.
Yeah, I wanted it to be cute, first and foremost. And it doesn't. It's just an empty box. It doesn't. It's just cute. No, So there was a pedal that when I was at Death by Audio, I had this. It was this weird circuit that I kind of like stumbled across, like making accidentally, and there was a Grooms. It was actually ended up being the last Grooms album, which was called Exit Index. And somebody was like, "You should put out do like a special edition pedal for the Grooms album," which I usually don't like doing stuff like that. Like I don't necessarily like this thing that being an advertisement for this thing.
Yeah.
But I liked the idea of the circuit, and it sounded cool to me. And so that was I guess like fall of 2017. This limited edition Death by Audio pedal called Exit Index. The original Exit Index had like some things that like I didn't love about it that I wanted to like improve on. So I started redeveloping it, and got some help from the Death by Audio. Oliver like sent me my old schematics that had lived on the Death by Audio computers, like that I was like, I'm trying to reverse engineer this. He's like, I can just send you the schematic. And like,
did you solid?
Yeah, totally. And I was like, oh yeah, that's what I did. Like as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, the ground goes there, and then this resistor ties to over here, and just made it sound like I wanted it to.
Where are you making these?
We're currently like just on the other side of the park, like catty corner.
In your house?
In my house, yeah. I have my computer's here, and then I have a little table here, and when I'm recording, there's a synth there, or one of several synths, and when it's pedal time, I like take the synth off and then fill the table with pedal stuff.
So what are the differences between the Death by Audio pedal and this pedal? Like, what have you changed specifically for this?
The Death by Audio pedal, and it's kind of part of what makes the pedal do this weird, like enveloping tremolo thing that it does. The original was like not as loud as I wanted it to be. So,
this is loud.
Yeah,
I was messing with it last night in the basement.
Okay, good.
I'm like, pretty late at night, and I was like, shit, it is really loud.
Okay, good. That's good to hear, because like it doesn't have to be loud. Like you can, yeah, like
you can. It's not as loud as you can see in the setting it was left in, because yeah.
The original, like when it was dimed completely as loud as it could get, it. Like you'd maybe get like a little treble boost and a bass cut. And so like depending on what you're playing into it, that might totally ruin your vibe. And you could record with it, because you can set everything the way you want it to. But like if you're playing with it live, just depending on what you're using it for, it wasn't ideal for everybody in that sense. So I made it a lot louder. I got these fancy JFET transistors, and I biased them in this really weird way that weirdly produced like this massive clean boost. Like I was shocked, honestly. Like they're they're biased like they're not supposed to be, and it was like usually when you do that, you get this gnarled, I mean, not always, but a lot of times that'll make it sound like the kind of like dying amp kind of sound, and this just wasn't that, so that was great. And I made the tremolo sound kind of just deeper and stranger, and I made it so that the expression pedal, which I'm kind of a sucker for having expression pedals on stage with me and just kind of constantly tinkering with them to the probably annoyance of my bandmates, but I just wanted it to be like super interactive, and I figured that out too.
I was trying to describe what it is to one of my friends. Said, what does that pedal do? I said, it's kind of like a tremolo,
Yeah.
but it's not just a tremolo.
Right.
And how would you describe it?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a good way of putting it. It's kind of like a tremolo, and it has like an LFO that you can adjust for the speed, but it's messy, and it has like a threshold below which everything is tremoloing, and above which it's also distorting at the same time. So above that threshold, it's just distortion, and when the volume like kind of dies below that threshold, then it starts to tremolo. So you hit your guitar and it's like super loud at first, and then when the volume's falling, it's yep. And if you want to play quiet, you can like be below that threshold the whole time, or you can make the threshold kind of more intense. And
so that's a great. I didn't actually know when the tremolo happened, right? So
it's hard to describe, honestly.
Yeah, it's hard to
describe.
The
manual was hard to write.
It's in the decay of
Yeah.
it, right? That's really cool. This is the first pedal that Trapdoor has done, which is you.
Yeah.
Do you have anything that you think you're going to do afterwards, or anything that you're thinking of that you need to do?
Yeah, I have the next plan, like the next schematic is all ready to go, and for another pedal that will be kind of more practical for everyone, and less interesting, maybe less inspiring. I mean, like, the thing I like about this for me is that because it does such kind of weird things, it makes me think differently about like what I'm going to play. This next thing is kind of going to be more utilitarian and still hopefully interesting, but yeah. So that's where I'm at right now.
Are you into modular synthesis at all?
I'm into the idea of modular synthesis.
Just not into the.
I'm not. Yeah, I don't have the. I guess I don't have the patience, kind of.
Yeah. So I don't know why I did it, because I'm into too many things already. But I have a modular system, and I do a lot of stuff with my modular synths. And the first shit I bought was the weird noisemaker, cool stuff, and then after I had like my rack of stuff and I could do everything I dreamt of sound wise, then I realized, how do I get sound into this, or how do I get sound out of this? And I was using all these adapters and doing all this crazy shit, and I realized I didn't have any of the utilitarian stuff.
Oh wow, yeah.
You know, and with modular, it's shocking how little there actually is of the like quarter-inch input.
Yeah.
You know,
like
basic shit that you would expect. But all this to say that even though it's not as exciting, that stuff is really necessary.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's true. And yeah, I mean, like, I like the idea of things like where it's just kind of crazy, and then like I listen to like 30, 40 minutes, like record, listen back, and be like, that second and a half, I'm going to sample that.
Absolutely. Yeah,
But-
that's my favorite.
Yeah, and that's like to me, like that's what I think I would do with modular stuff, because I
That's-
wouldn't be able to like, I would not have the patience to like be like, I will now do a modular set where I'm like adjusting this and this and letting it go, and yeah, it would be much more like let it go crazy, grab a second, and make a song out of that second.
Check out Trapdoor Electronics. Check out Activity. Check out Travis because he's awesome. Thanks.
You too.
Thanks for being here,
Thank
talking
you.
to me.
Bash out their brains, protect me. My wild love could not stay dead, could not go to sleep. Bash out their brains. Bash out their brains. Moon turning red, I'm dreaming in drugstores. Picture the porn asleep in my mind. Bash out my brain.